Flowering, Living the Manifestation Experience, written by Richard Dotz. Chapter 1, Living the Manifestation Experience. Life is hard when we try to understand all of it at once. In a seminal study conducted by psychology professors Norbert Schwartz and Gerald Clore back in 1983, participants were asked to rate their current mood and satisfaction with life as a whole. Surprisingly, Schwartz and Clore found that individuals' ratings of both their mood and life satisfaction were affected by the weather on that day, with people reportedly being happier and more satisfied with their lives. In general, more on sunny than on rainy days. In another condition of the experiment, researchers explicitly reminded participants about the weather before asking for their ratings. This time around, weather only had an effect on participants' mood ratings, but not their life satisfaction ratings. What's going on here? Why does the weather affect how we feel about our lives in one case, but not in another? As it turns out, asking a person to evaluate his entire life is not exactly an easy thing to do. It is such a big question that most of us do not even know where to begin. Where do we start? Do we assess our jobs, our relationships, health, finances, or all of those at once? How do we decide the weights to put on each category? Therefore, when faced with the daunting task of evaluating their lives as a whole, participants unconsciously took the easy way out. They used their current moods as a mental shortcut to determine their life satisfaction in general. If their mood at the moment was good, largely influenced by the weather, life appeared good as well. If their mood was bad, life appeared to be dark and gloomy. Consciously reminding participants about the weather made them aware of this mental shortcut they were using, which is why weather ceased to have an effect on life satisfaction ratings when participants were specifically reminded about the weather. This classic experiment beautifully illustrates a few important principles. First, it demonstrates how little self-awareness we have about our lives and what affects our well-being in general. There has been a lot of emphasis on life satisfaction and happiness in the popular press lately, with every expert eager to prescribe his or her own advice, but no one has been able to conclusively define what a happy life looks like. The best definition I have ever come across is one by Abraham Hicks. A happy life is just a string of happy moments. But most people don't allow the happy moments because they're so busy trying to get a happy life. The problem with these happiness surveys and books is that they cause us to evaluate our lives in unconsciously biased ways. Just like the participants in Schwartz and Clore's seminal study, life itself is such a multifaceted experience that we can't even begin to wrap our minds around it. Thus, life appears to be difficult or daunting when we try to grasp all of it at once. A single nagging physical symptom or a challenge we face can greatly affect our own perception of life without us even realizing it. And as the study shows, even irrelevant cues such as the weather can play a part in our own inaccurate assessments of life. It has been said that scientists who study objective phenomena are usually happier than the navel-gazing types. Many spiritual seekers and those seeking self-improvement tend to spend inordinate amounts of time in self-contemplation, pondering over various aspects of their lives. As the study above shows, such prolonged self-contemplation can do more harm than good. It can cause us to focus excessively on the things that are going wrong in our lives to the exclusion of everything else. This misdirected focus often happens unconsciously, and if left unchecked, can lead to an extremely bleak view of life, which results in a predominantly negative inner state. In turn, a negative inner state sets the stage for more undesired experiences in our outer reality. I was reminded of this during my 2 week bout of knee pain caused by overexercising. I experienced a sharp, unbearable pain whenever I attempted to squat or bend my left knee, which resulted in a restricted range of motion. My continued fixation on the intensity of the pain and the perceived incurability of the situation led to much fear and unhappiness during those 2 weeks of my life, although everything else was going great as usual. If you had asked me for my own life satisfaction rating back then, it would have been pretty low. I had unconsciously allowed myself to be overwhelmed by my own negative thoughts about the situation. Fortunately, I caught myself in time and redirected my focus towards my own desired healing instead of the undesirable pain. The moment I was successful in shifting my own focus about the situation was when the physical transformation occurred. I was soon led to my healing on the outside. The pain subsided as quickly as it began as I traversed the path of healing, and my knee remains pain free to this day. Most people go through life wanting to know all the answers at once. They demand a clear view of the road ahead and how things will work out over the next 5 to 10 years. They want to see the paths that will lead them to their desired success. Because of our desire to see the whole staircase clearly at once, we often plunge ourselves into needless worrying, planning, and despair. Sometimes all this worrying can keep us stuck in a rut, unable to face life. As Martin Luther King so wisely puts it, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. More than just another inspirational saying, I have found Dr. King's advice to be particularly useful in my own life. It was times when I demanded to see the whole staircase, as it were, that I experienced the most emotional turmoil on the inside. That was when my ego and my smaller self was speaking, trying to figure everything out through my limited intellect. My ego wanted to be the one that healed my painful knee and became desperate when it could not conceive of ways to do so due to its limited understanding. When I let go of the need to know how my healing would occur and just be open to all possibilities in every moment, that was when my ego and my smaller self ceded control to my higher self. My higher self, which is always in tune with the spirit, knows exactly what needs to be done in any situation. I have often written that the universe does not perceive the same limitations as we do from our limited human perspectives. Therefore, everything is perfect to the universe. When we give up control to our higher selves and get out of our own way, we recognize the universal perfection that has always been there. What is thus corrected are the errors and blind spots in our own thinking. When these blind spots are corrected on the inside, undesirable situations of lack and limitation, even stubborn circumstances that have persisted for the longest time, automatically clear up on the outside. The metaphysical literature is filled with stories of how long-standing conditions spontaneously resolve themselves with a correction of one's erroneous thinking. Florence Scovel Shinn's classic books are replete with delightful and pointed references to them. Does this mean that my knee pain was imagined and merely caused by my own thinking? Many readers of spiritual books are offended when they read that problems and undesirable situations in their lives arise from their own limited thinking. This does not in any way suggest that our problems in life are imagined. My knee pain felt very real indeed when I was experiencing them, but rather that our thoughts carry immense power. In fact, our thoughts carry so much power that they have the ability to create and shape our everyday realities and experiences. Thus, when a metaphysician says that our thoughts create our own reality, it does not mean that our problems are imaginary. Rather, it means that the key to correcting all these perceived problems in our life lies in first correcting our own negative habits of thought on the inside. The superficial way to handle problems and issues in life is to pretend that they do not exist. Some people, upon learning about the power of positive thinking, start to convince themselves that their problems are not really there or that they are making things up. In my case, I could have convinced myself that the pain wasn't really as bad as I imagined and that I could change the way I live to manage it. But what we are talking about here is not positive thinking. It goes deeper than that. It is about first acknowledging and being at peace with all of life, even the supposedly undesirable aspects, before we can move beyond them and create a more desired reality. Until I was at peace with my hurting left knee and stopped complaining about how unjust it was to be afflicted with such a condition, my ego prevented myself from seeing my options clearly and moving ahead with the healing. In my book, Dollars Flow to Me Easily, I attempted to do something I had never done before. I wanted to write a book that would dissolve the reader's various resistances towards manifesting money and financial abundance as they were reading it. Thankfully, the hundreds of success stories and positive reviews I received since its publication proved that I was at least somewhat successful in my approach. That was when I had another idea. Why limit it to just the subject of money? Why not open it up and make it applicable to all of life? Why not apply the same process to all areas of our life? That became my intention for this book, which you are now listening to or holding in your hands. Our lives are already inherently perfect the way they are, but so many people allow themselves to be caught up in small negative situations. They allow a few unhappy events to color their perceptions of life, which in turn leads to more undesired manifestations. Would it be wonderful if these few unhappy events and blind spots could be dropped once and for all? How nice would it be to drop our self-imposed limitations and live a wonderful life with no limitations? This book will not only show you how, but also take you through the transformational process spontaneously as you read. It is no overstatement to say that your life can change just by reading this book. I say so not because of the power of these written words to move you into action, but because of the higher power you harness when you let go of the perceived problems and limitations in your own life. I experienced this form of seemingly passive transformation many times in my own life when I gave up control to the higher power that was flowing through me. In my early days, those episodes usually happened out of sheer desperation or helplessness, when I had hit rock bottom and had nowhere else to turn to. I had done everything humanly possible and was at my wit's end. That was when the much desired last-minute manifestations usually occurred. Today, however, I understand that one does not always have to hit rock bottom to manifest our desired good. Letting go does not have to be an involuntary or painful process. Rather, it can be the first step of a conscious manifestation process where we recognize the higher power within us and let the universe show us the way. Far from being a sign of weakness, letting go is a sign of deep wisdom and faith in the universe. You will find as you read this book that I advocate very few physical steps to take. You will not find much here in terms of practical, outwardly action steps to improve your life or mood. But despite so, your life will still improve for the better as you read this book. How do I know? My experience tells me that by picking up this book, you have already signaled your intention to take your existing life experience to a whole new level. Therefore, you already hold the broader intention for a more fulfilling life on the inside. In turn, the universe has already picked up on your intentions the first time you held them on the inside and even led you to this book. It is done. What this book will help you to do is to gently drop the counter intentions and resistances that may stand in the way of your broader intentions for a more fulfilling life. Through illuminating inner exercises and the use of specific words and frequencies, we will gently dissolve the resistances and barriers in your life during the quiet time that we spend together. As such, while I may not know the content of what you are specifically asking for, you would have let go of much of your emotional baggage during our time together. You would have, on both a conscious and an unconscious level, created the much needed openings in your life for transformational shifts to occur. When you let go of anything that is not in line with your true divine nature, that is when the desired good starts flowing unbridled into your life. Anytime you hold on to any last vestiges of lack or limitation and remain focused on them is when you block the flow of goodness into your life. In line with my intentions for this book, I am not going to start off by telling you what's possible or what to expect as you read. That would be akin to setting boundaries that delineate what's coming next. The great Lester Levinson once said, "Every thought is a limitation. Every thought must be limited." By stating what is possible, we have already limited the scope of transformations that can happen. As we move into the first chapter, I invite you to consider the sum total of your life experience and the fullness of what you have experienced so far. Notice how difficult it is to sum up your life experience in just a few words or even an entire book. Your life is so much more than that. The richness and goodness in your life, once you are willing to see beyond the few undesirable bits, is overflowing, and yet there is still more to come. Your potential for greatness and manifesting a fulfilled life is unlimited. So turn the page, keep listening, and let the miracles begin. Chapter 2: The Myth of Small versus Big Changes. I notice an interesting pattern whenever I speak to individuals who are unhappy with their lives. Invariably, when asked about what was happening in their lives and why they were so dissatisfied with it, these individuals would engage in what I would call stringing behavior, where they strung all of their perceived problems together into one big coagulating mass. No matter the nature of their problems, each one seemed to lead to or be related to the other. In turn, each of the problems reinforced one another. Interestingly, the happy and fulfilled individuals whom I spoke to did not exhibit the same stringing behavior. They often referred to their challenges in life as transient or isolated cases, unrelated to the larger part of their lives. Over the years, it quickly became apparent to me that the problems faced by these two groups of individuals really weren't that different. There were the usual health, relationship, and money issues that a modern city dweller would expect. But what differed was how each group perceived and handled these issues in their lives. The former group, comprising of unhappy and depressed individuals, had a tendency to lump all of their challenges into one big mass and then attempt to deal with the resulting mess, often unsuccessfully, whereas the latter group saw these issues as temporary and unrelated to the bigger part of their lives. The depressed individuals came to identify so strongly with these issues that they believe they were inseparable from them. On the other hand, the happy individuals saw themselves as whole and complete, with the problems separate from them. I cite this example to show how a simple shift in our perception can cause our attitudes towards life to vary greatly. When one sees the problems in their life as one big entangled mess, there is often the tendency to look for big answers and the urgency to implement massive changes. This is why there are so many books out there advocating quantum leaps or tantalizing us with a complete makeover of our lives, often in 30 days or less. By offering drastic solutions to life's problems, these books play into the minds of consumers looking for big changes. Why? Because small changes are perceived as too slow and too insignificant to matter. We often desire everything to change for the better at once. When I objectively examine the changes that have occurred in my own life, I can unequivocally state that the small changes I made have had a long term success rate of over 95%, while the quantum leaps I attempted have had a dismal success rate of less than 10%. Take, for example, my desire to improve my level of physical fitness, a typical daunting goal for many people. I adopted the small shift of cycling on my stationary bike for just 5 minutes a day, which progressively increased over time to 45 minutes a day and has remained at that duration ever since for the past few years of my life. In the beginning, those around me were skeptical. What can 5 minutes of cycling a day possibly do to improve one's health? Most people would rather not do it. It was too small and significant to matter. But they were missing the point. 5 minutes of cycling and getting my heart rate up was better than sitting around all day and no cycling at all, which was the sedentary lifestyle I was leading previously. The people who scoffed at me 5 years ago are still doing zero exercise and leading the same lives as before, while my workout routine has created beneficial changes in several areas of my life. Another example that comes to mind is my journey of becoming an author. I often refer to myself as an accidental author. I used to marvel at how some authors were so prolific and could write 40 to 50 books over the span of their careers. When I attempted to emulate them in a big way by writing day after day, the words flowed slowly. I found myself stuck, discouraged, and burnt out. Then I remembered the principle of making small changes. I set out to write just 1 page a day. Nothing more, nothing less. That was easy to do. It eventually led to writing a couple of pages each day, a routine which I have kept at for the past few years to date. I credit the work of Dr. Robert Maurer, in particular his excellent books and audio programs on the Japanese art of Kaizen, or continuous improvement, for helping me look beyond this perceptual blind spot. I had previously believed that only big and drastic actions could create long lasting and the much needed changes in our lives. Little did I know that it was a limiting belief in of itself. As Dr. Maurer explains, our brain is hardwired to keep us safely in our comfort zones. It is afraid of massive changes and will do whatever possible to keep us back. Small changes not only bypass the internal circuitry that is designed to keep us safe, but they also greatly increase our chances of success. I have found this to be true in my own life. How can the technique of making small changes apply to our spiritual lives? I often tell people that to manifest whatever they want in life, they have to start by worrying a little less. This means focusing a little less on the negative, undesired aspects of their lives and more on their desired reality. This is a perfect example of making a small shift on the inside. Yet most people do not do it because they are looking for big changes and quantum leaps. To them, dropping just one negative thought a day seems to be the most counterintuitive and insignificant thing to do. It almost seems too trivial a matter. And it is. Whether you drop that one negative thought or not is not going to matter right now. But when added up and compounded over time, it is going to matter a great deal. It is what makes all of the difference in the outcome of your life. When I first learned about Lester Levinson's technique to let go of unwanted emotions within ourselves, it didn't immediately strike me that Lester was harnessing the power of making small, almost imperceptible shifts in our inner state. Lester advocated working on one emotion at a time until one was free from it. He did not say, work on a whole bunch of stuff and be free from all of it at once. Instead, he gently took his students by hand and instructed them to just work on the specific emotion which came up in that moment. No matter what comes up in the moment, we were to work on it until we were totally free from it. Then, in the next moment, we would work on the next emotion that came up, and so on. Looking back, I now appreciate the value of Lester's teachings. Quit trying to make big changes all at once. You would have a much better chance at long lasting success if you started with one small thing today. I used to walk around as a nervous wreck, worrying about every single thing that would happen to me. I was worried about offending others, about running out of money, about being a failure in life, amounting to nothing, and so on. Every conceivable kind of worrisome thought ran through my mind like 1,000 galloping horses. For the longest time, I remained a slave to my uncontrolled thoughts. If I had wanted to banish all of these worrisome thoughts at once, it would have been an impossible task. I would have been setting myself up for failure and disappointment. Yet that was what I attempted to do in the early part of my journey. I saw it as either all or nothing. Either I got rid of everything, or I continued to put up with them. It hadn't occurred to me that I could do it the easy way, by guiding myself to let go of one worrisome thought a day, which was what I eventually did. I let go of one worrisome thought the moment it came up and did not stop until I was completely free from that thought. Sometimes freeing myself from a single thought took just a few minutes. At other times, it took several hours, days, or weeks. But because I kept at it persistently, I was eventually emotionally free from every false thought that came up in my mind. This method allowed me to become free from it all. If someone were to ask, how does freeing yourself from the influence of your own thoughts help to create positive changes in your life? They would have fallen into the same trap of looking for big changes and big action steps to take. When one frees themselves from the negative influences of one worrisome thought, they free up just that little bit more of their consciousness and reclaim the power they have given to that thought. Eventually, one comes to recognize that all of their thoughts are false and that it is our belief in these thoughts that have caused much of our suffering. Our thoughts, which we have identified with so closely, have never been a part of us. They were merely the false projections of our own ego, often to keep us safe. An extreme example of this comes from observing people who believe that the whole world is against them. Okay, perhaps not the whole world, but just the whole office. It is interesting to hear these individuals talk, and they are often happy to share their troubles with you. Instead of judging them and attempting to offer your advice, just listen to what they are saying. Notice what the crux of the problem is here. The issue is not that the whole office is against them, but that they have somehow believed their own thoughts so much that they think it is so. They have placed so much importance on and allowed themselves to believe wholly in their own thoughts. The same goes for conspiracy theorists and people who stubbornly cling to their own beliefs. These individuals are unable to see alternative perspectives or develop any empathy for another person. Why? Over time, these individuals have placed so much value and emphasis on their own thoughts that they come to believe everything that passes through their mind as true, without realizing that most of our thoughts are nothing more than the false projections of the ego. Now, how can you apply this to your own life? You can do so by first recognizing that one small inner shift can make a huge difference in the eventual outcome. Therefore, do not dismiss any small changes or shifts that you make on the inside. Even a small decrease in the intensity of your worrisome or fearful thoughts is good progress. In a very short time to come, these small changes, which you continually make on the inside, will add up to massive transformations. Therefore, it helps to become a little more self aware each day. It helps to become a little more in tune with your inner state each day by opening up a little bit more to the nudges which you receive on the inside. Second, be easy with all this. Can you listen to that inner voice just a wee bit more today? Can you allow yourself to indulge in something which you have always wanted to do for just a little while, free from societal pressures and from the expectations of others? Can you listen to yourself and do something that makes your heart sing for just a few minutes today? If you can, you would have made much progress on the inside. When viewed on its own, this little change may seem trivial to you, but you never know how everything fits together in the grand scheme of things, just as how I could never have foreseen that the single page I wrote would eventually become a part of a whole book and part of a whole series of books. When I wrote that very first page, what was to come next wasn't obvious to me. The greater scheme of things is not for us to figure out, but we can always follow our inner nudges and take the next small step we are inspired to. And this is perhaps the best method for dissolving long-standing resistant feelings and habits in our life. A common reason for inner resistance is that we expect changes to happen in a certain way. For example, if we have been struggling with health issues for the longest time, then we expect the healing process to be equally arduous. Similarly, if someone has been experiencing financial lack for most of his life, he may expect that any change can only come through equally massive and drastic means. But why? Change can happen in an instant when we are ready and willing, as I have experienced for myself. My financial situation was completely transformed in a matter of weeks after struggling with it for decades. The moment I understood these principles fully on the inside, the most effortless shifts happen on the outside with no physical action on my part. A small shift in my understanding was all that was necessary. And this is why the great spiritual masters often teach that if you have to pray at all, then pray for more wisdom so you can recognize the truth that is eternal and omnipresent. You can be assured that the ensuing change process, which happens for you, will always be in your highest good and will always be in line with what is most appropriate for you. Give up the false limiting belief that change has to be a difficult struggle. Give up the belief that you always have to hit rock bottom before things can change for the better. The proverbial dark night of the soul is not a necessary step in the process of change. It only happens when we are unwilling to change and stubbornly cling on to the parts of our old selves. The universe always knows the most harmonious and direct path to your healing, health, wellness, and joy. In fact, you are already that which you seek. So, how can things be any different? In the moment you let go of your stubborn insistence on how certain things have to happen in a certain way, you free the universe to work its magic. Chapter 3. What is a spiritual path anyway? I once had a protracted coughing spell caused by a throat irritation, which made it difficult for me to fall asleep at night. Each time I attempted to lie flat in bed, I would feel an involuntary urge to cough. The only short lived remedy seemed to be to sit up in bed and take a sip of warm water so that the itchiness would subside. As soon as the throat irritation subsided and I went back to sleep, lying flat on the bed immediately triggered that itchy cough again. And so the cycle went on throughout the night for several days. I hardly got any sleep, and the coughing did not seem to get any better. All throughout the episode, I felt a very strong inner urge to suck on a cough drop. I had been introduced to a brand of highly effective French herbal cough drops from my days as a teacher, in which I would take after long lectures to soothe my throat. Amidst all the coughing, which was causing my eyes to water and keeping me up all night, I was once again reminded of those cough drops and how effective they had been for me in the past. You would think that I would immediately have jumped out of bed and reached for those cough drops on the table just a few feet away from my bed, but alas, I did not. Instead, I reasoned that since the cough drops were coated with a layer of sugar, and as I had already brushed my teeth before going to bed, my dentist wouldn't be pleased. Hence, I decided to heal my cough through more quote unquote spiritual means. For the next 2 hours, in between coughing and sipping warm water in bed, I tried every kind of spiritual intervention possible. I first tried praying to God to be healed from my terrible cough. When that did not seem to work, I tried feeling grateful and visualizing that my cough had already been healed. Then I tried all sorts of energy healing techniques, ranging from tapping on my meridian points to channeling the chi throughout my body to the throat area. Finally, exhausted and desperate to get a good night's rest, I caved in and sucked on 2 sugar coated cough drops. My coughing subsided within 5 minutes, and I slept all the way through like a baby. This humorous but true cough drop story illustrates how we often fall into the trap of looking for spiritual solutions to various issues in life and end up getting trapped in the process. What does a spiritual solution really look like anyway? What makes a particular path more spiritual than the other? A spiritual path is often indistinguishable from the physical. In my case, I had assumed that taking a cough drop wasn't a spiritual thing to do. To me, back then, a spiritual path meant something that required no physical intervention at all, like a sudden healing brought about by a stream of unseen energy. Little did I know that this thought in itself was a false and limiting belief. It had no basis in spiritual truth. Believing that certain paths were more spiritual than others kept me stuck and limited the results I could experience.
As the spiritual masters have repeatedly taught since the beginning of time, the physical and the spiritual are two sides of the same coin, inseparable from each other. Each time we attempt to classify something as purely physical or purely spiritual, we deny the presence of the divine spirit in everything that we do. For example, some people view money as a purely physical commodity. They end up with the misguided belief that money is unspiritual and should be avoided at all costs. These are the individuals who often manifest financial lack and limitation in their own lives. Do they deserve it? Absolutely not. Their realities are the direct result of holding on to misguided beliefs about money being non spiritual. In the same way, my lack of healing resulted from holding on to a misguided belief about how taking a cough drop wouldn't be good for me. Simple beliefs, when stubbornly held on to, have the power to shape our realities for better or for worse. Notice how I had a clear inner nudge to take a cough drop the moment my coughing started. Hence, my higher self already knew what was the best for me and the path of least resistance in that situation. Had I acted on this nudge without questioning or reasoning my way through it, I would have followed the path of least resistance to my desired outcome very quickly. Instead, I allowed my logical mind to override the inner knowing. I had allowed my ego to dictate which path was more quote unquote spiritual for me. My ego prevented me from traversing the path of least resistance, which resulted in a blocking of my desired good. Take a look to see how this may be happening in your own life. I often read stories about how individuals are unwilling to go through certain medical procedures, instead, opting for more spiritual interventions which they believe are more appropriate. But the same questions remain. What does a spiritual solution really look like? What makes a particular solution more spiritual than the other? If the good work of God permeates everything, then why do we still believe that some paths are more spiritual and better than others? The late Dr. David Hawkins, a world renowned spiritual teacher who also trained as a medical doctor, speaks of the importance of not dismissing any healing modality outright. He talks about how there are circumstances under which a pill would be more appropriate than a particular spiritual healing modality. Dr. Hawkins refers to a pill as representing an elevation in the consciousness of mankind, in which man manages to fit the cure for a particular condition into a pill. Of course, I am not advocating that popping pills is the appropriate path in every situation, but in many situations, it will be the path of least resistance for an individual. After the initial symptoms have subsided, complementary methods and paths to healing can perhaps be explored. If there is a strong inner nudge to take a particular pathway, one should listen to the innate wisdom, their higher self, and take it. The same applies to our daily manifestations. Individuals sometimes shy away from buying a particular item outright, instead, preferring to attract the item into their lives. This is another form of what we have described above, that of the ego seeing certain paths as more spiritual than others. Buying an item outright with the money you have is no less spiritual and no less a testament to your role as a powerful creator than attracting an item into your life through seemingly spiritual means. Money is really spirit in action. And thus, when you feel a strong inner calling to purchase an item, you should go for it without second guessing or holding yourself back. Some people tell me, I can't bear to spend money on this item. Hence, I am using metaphysical means to attract it into my life. If this thought comes up for you, examine why you can't bear to spend your own money in the first place. Is it because of underlying issues of deservingness? Do you feel that you cannot afford the item in the first place? Do you feel that you do not really deserve it? Or is the item really not that important to you? These thoughts are insightful as they point to a deeper and subtle belief that lies beneath the surface. Don't brush these thoughts aside as frivolous, but instead examine them closely. Why is it that you think this way? When you get to the core of the beliefs in themselves, you would have pulled these unconscious beliefs into your conscious mind. Once these underlying beliefs become fully conscious to you, steps can be taken to let them go. I used to have a strong preference for attracting things into my life. Instead of buying an item outright, I would instead try to win it through a particular contest or have someone give it to me as a gift. Note that it is perfectly all right to attract something into your life through alternative means if that is what you feel inspired to do. I have won contests in which I felt a strong and clear nudge from the universe to participate. However, when you feel a strong nudge to pay cash for something, then that represents your current path of least resistance. Follow your inner nudge and take that path. Upon examining my own inner beliefs, I realized I wanted to attract things into my life as opposed to buying them because my ego needed to prove that it could make these manifestation techniques and principles work. This is a trap that many students of these metaphysical laws often fall into. After learning about the various manifestation techniques, there is a strong desire to prove these techniques work. Hence, inordinate amounts of time and effort is spent on manifesting things through these alternative channels to the exclusion of everything else. This is absurd since we are already born creators at the core of our being, and there is no way we can prove to be something more than that which we already are. It is only when we believe we are not, or that we are limited in some way, that the need to demonstrate our power arises. Let go of the need to prove these spiritual laws to anyone else. Instead, rest in the knowing that you are already a powerful manifester and that all channels are open to you the moment you hold an intention for something. When you develop a conscious awareness and recognize the divine presence in everything and everyone around you, then any artificial differences between the physical and spiritual world will fall away. You begin to see the spiritual in everything physical, even a cough drop, and likewise, how spiritual phenomena can manifest themselves physically. Any separation was only at the level of your ego, an illusion you have created for yourself. Therefore, who is to say that your automobile is any less spiritual than a tree, or that your computer is any less spiritual than the Holy Bible? They are all one and the same, physical manifestations of spiritual perfection. Divinity expresses itself perfectly in various forms. Start by seeing the divine spirit in everything you do. You will realize that there is really no separation between yourself and everything around you. The divine spirit permeates everything and everyone, and we are all part of the same universal field. When you develop an appreciation for the seemingly physical world around you, you start to treat everything with a sense of kindness and respect. Respect not because you are afraid of offending the divine, but because you recognize that this same divine perfection also exists within you. Many spiritual cultures have the tradition of speaking to the inanimate objects around them. Dr. Hugh Lin, the Hawaiian spiritual leader who wrote Zero Limits, could converse freely with inanimate objects such as chairs and rooms. I used to scratch my head at this practice, wondering whether these shamans were making things up. This was until I started speaking to my automobile. Don't worry, it didn't sound at all like Herbie, and the conversation took place in my head. In that moment, I recognized how my automobile was a perfect physical manifestation of spirit and how we can converse freely with the universe at any time. My automobile allows me to conveniently travel around town and get things done. Thus, my automobile is really a spiritual transportation solution, although it is entirely made up of physical parts. Had I insisted on more spiritual means of transportation like teleportation, I might never have stepped out of my house. Are there any manifestation pathways you have denied because they are not spiritual enough for you? Do you consider certain channels to be more spiritual than others? Insisting that your good only comes through spiritual means is a recipe for disappointment, since the spiritual is in everything you do. The universe doesn't make a distinction in the first place. Divine Spirit expresses itself perfectly in all manners and ways, just as your manifestation pathways always take the form that is most appropriate for you. When there is a clear inner impulse that feels right to you, just wouldn't go away. Go for it.
Chapter 4: The Art of Flowering and Flourishing. Picture, if you will, a perfect day where everything goes right. From the moment you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. You wake up at just the perfect time in the morning, feeling completely refreshed and excited about the day before you. The commute to work is light and enjoyable as you listen to your favorite songs on the radio. As you move throughout your day, you meet with the right people and resources to help you achieve your goals for that day. Everything you ask for is easily done, and every request is easily fulfilled. You find yourself eating healthy, delicious food while enjoying the company of your closest friends. There is more than enough time to do everything you need to do for the day and still get home early to spend time with your family. You even manage to read one chapter of a good book and plan for the following day before turning in for the night. How does this perfect day sound like to you? Wouldn't it be nice if you experienced this perfect day not only once in a blue moon, but every single day of your life? The truth is that most people's days do not look like this at all. They hit the snooze button a few times before dragging themselves out of bed half awake. Their morning commute during rush hour is a stressful journey. By the time they reach the office, they find themselves rushing headlong into their tasks for the day and hitting various unexpected roadblocks, all of which only add to their frustration and stress levels. By the time evening rolls around, they are exhausted and disappointed at themselves for having achieved so little that day. And so, the cycle repeats itself all over again. Why do many people's days not look like the perfect version described earlier? Author Greg Ballantyne lays out the answer in his book, The Perfect Day Formula. His answer can be summarized in a few words. Most people do not spend time planning their days in advance. As a result, they allow their days to happen at random and merely spend much of their time reacting to various events that occur. I have found Greg's analysis to be true, both in the practical and metaphysical sense. The most important lesson I wish to convey through this series of books is the importance of conscious, deliberate creation. Abraham Hicks calls it the act of pre-paving. This means consciously deciding what you want to create ahead of time and then aligning yourself with that final outcome. It means starting with the end in mind and then stepping into the ideal outcome instead of allowing life to just randomly happen to you and pass you by. Proper planning is the key to living a happy and fulfilled life. The second reason why most people's days are far from perfect is that they do not believe life can be perfect. We have been taught over the years about the virtues of hard work and struggle, and that life is not a bed of roses. Ironically, these sayings, which were meant to encourage us during challenging times, have been turned into excuses for living lousy and unfulfilled lives where we settle for less than we can be. Spiritual masters throughout the ages have taught us that we can lead perfectly abundant and unlimited lives in all areas and at all levels of our being. This means we can move through our days feeling 100% happy and fulfilled, where everything and everyone we encounter pleases us immensely. Everything we ask for can come true in an instant, and negative feelings can be a thing of the past. So, why is this perfect state still not happening for some people? Abraham Hicks often talks about the importance of pre paving or preparing the grid. What this means is preparing ourselves mentally to receive what we have asked for physically. For example, if you would like to create more financial abundance in your life, then the ultimate physical manifestation of that would be more money in your bank account. But how do you bridge the gap between where you currently are and where you want to be? Although it would be nice, one does not just suddenly wake up and find themselves swimming in a large pool of money. Instead, the secret is to pre-pave this desired reality beforehand and to gradually ease oneself into it. By doing the inner work necessary and shifting our inner reality one bit at a time, we are aligning our inner states with the outer realities which we are trying to create. When there is no discrepancy between our inner states and desired outer realities, that is when the physical manifestations have to happen. That is when everything happens in one fell swoop and you experience all the manifestations as instant. But it is not instant, for the creative process has started long before the actual physical manifestation. Until that tipping point, all of the manifestative forces were working in unseen ways that were not apparent to our physical senses. The key to reaching this tipping point is to maintain the flow of energy towards your desired outcome long before any physical signs of change are apparent. If you train yourself to do this, you will become an effective and successful manifester. If you think of physical manifestations in terms of flowing energy and creating the desired changes in your inner state as opposed to controlling your outer conditions, then those outer conditions have to match up very quickly. Most people trip themselves up because they are always trying to change the outer conditions in their lives, not realizing that their inner states are so far apart from what they are trying to achieve physically. For example, suppose that you are trying to manifest financial abundance in your life, yet your inner state is constantly filled with worries and fears about money. These intense negative emotions or thoughts about money point to the huge gulf that exists between your inner state and your desired outcome. Without bridging this gap, the outer manifestations that you seek cannot happen. Let's suppose that you somehow, quote unquote, got lucky and won the lottery, which resulted in a large sum of money in your possession. But since everything in life happens in accordance with these universal laws, outer reality will soon match up to your predominant inner state of lack. This is why so many lottery winners squander their newfound wealth shortly after their win. Their inner states have not matched up to their outer realities. This is not to say that everyone who wins the lottery eventually loses the money. I have always found it fascinating to study the mindsets of these lottery winners and the stories behind their winnings. Some of them knew they were going to win even before the winning numbers were announced. These individuals have knowingly or unknowingly tapped into the universal principles which we have discussed here. They first created inner states which were in alignment with their desired outer realities. They then stepped right into the experience of winning the lottery. The good news is that your perfect life can be delivered to you in infinite ways. The universe knows the best ways through which your desired good can come to you, and it may or may not involve winning the lottery. In fact, winning the lottery is only one of the infinite ways through which you can experience more financial abundance in your life. So why limit yourself? Why insist that your good has to come through this one particular way out of the myriad of ways that are possible? For some people, financial abundance can come through having a successful business or holding a well paying job. For others, it can come through business deals and savvy investments. Leave the pathways of manifestation up to the universe and just focus on working on your inner state. When the time is right to take physical action, you will know. Using our earlier examples of creating more financial abundance, how does one pre-pave and prepare for a more abundant future reality? A smart way to do so would be to put in place a structure that supports your eventual manifestations. Abraham Hicks calls this preparing the grid, where the grid is a structure that supports your desired future reality. They also advocate filling in the grid by adding more details about the desired outcome which you seek. I know that all of this may sound quite abstract, so let me walk you through a tangible example. You start off with the final outcome or the end result in mind, which in our example is to create more financial abundance in your life. Based on this endpoint, ask yourself, what are some of the mental structures that have to be in place for you to sustain this outer reality? By mental structures, I am not referring to physical steps or ways for you to get there. This is where these teachings differ from the more action oriented methods, in that we are not looking for tangible ways to achieve our eventual goals. Instead, what we want to identify here are inner pathways of thinking and feeling that can help us sustain our desired realities. One commonly used question to help us along is, what or how will I feel when I get there? In answering this question, seek to go beyond the superficial feelings of happiness, joy, or fulfillment. Instead, really go deep within and identify the subtle feelings. How will you feel when this physical reality you seek finally manifests for you? Yes, you will feel joyful, but what kind of joy is it? Is there a subtler and deeper dimension to that joy? Is there more richness in that joy? These deeper and more nuanced feelings of alignment are what we are going for here. The reason why I'm probing you to feel deeply is because most of the first few feelings that come up are conditioned feelings. We think we will feel happy and fulfilled when we achieve our goals, which is why we strive so hard for them in the first place. But is this how we will really feel when we get there? Or are there deeper feelings that we are going for? Unless we connect with these deeper feelings, we are not connecting with the actual feelings underlying our desired manifestations, but merely ideal, romanticized versions of them. So there you have it, the first piece of the puzzle. One reason why people unknowingly limit themselves from living a perfect life is because they have not taken the time to experience the fullness of their inner feelings. When you experience the unlimited abundance of the inner world as represented by the richness of your feelings, that is when outer abundance and prosperity blossoms. Stated differently, your outer manifestations are limited by the extent of the richness of your inner world. This inner richness, in turn, knows no limits except for how deeply you allow yourself to experience your inner good. Chapter 5: Manifestation Without Limits. In the first few chapters that laid the foundations for this book, I showed you a few common stumbling blocks and unreasonable expectations that most people unknowingly hold on to. These are the very same expectations and mental blind spots that hold us back and prevent us from living the complete manifestation experience. As we move into the second half of this book, I am going to shift gears and talk about what you can do to live the full manifestation experience. By this, I mean living a life where there are truly no limits to your desires. A life in which every intention you hold comes true within a very short period of time, and life becomes one exhilarating manifestation experience after another. A life where all your worries, fears, and negative thoughts become a thing of the past. In the moment you hold an intention, it becomes so and materializes in your physical reality soon after. When you live in such an exalted state, there are no worries or fears because what can be left for you to be worried or fearful about? You finally recognize and step into your own power as the creator of your own reality. I call this joyful state a flowering state. It is a state in which you can manifest without limits and thus experience abundance in all areas of your life. Ancient spiritual masters have called it by many other names: the flow state, nirvana, enlightenment, a state of bliss. Abraham Hicks calls it being in the vortex. Whatever labels you ascribe to this eternal state of bliss is not important. What is more important is that you realize that this state exists within your reach right now, no matter what your current circumstances may be. This is your natural state of being. It is your birthright. Since this is your natural, untainted state, it is possible to step into this unlimited realm of possibilities just by making a few conscious adjustments on the inside. The reason why so few people even reach or stay in this state of eternal bliss and instantaneous manifestations is because most people have a misguided notion of what this flowering state is supposed to be. We have been taught that to be more in life, we need to have more. Hence, many people's lives are revolved around getting or achieving more. They are always looking out for that one new spiritual technique, one extra productivity tip, one more course to take, or one new material possession that will move them closer to this desired end state. As I have written several times in the past, reaching this state of flowering is not about having more. It is not an exercising in having, but one centered on dropping. This is the part that is so counterintuitive and difficult for the rational mind to comprehend. How can I possibly improve my life if I subtract stuff away from it? This doesn't make sense. This is the argument which the ego mind always tries to make. That's why letting go is so counterintuitive. Some people spend their whole lives fighting against it, not realizing that everything will change in the moment they finally let go of their stubborn insistence on things. The true art of manifestations is not about attracting more stuff into your life, physical or otherwise. Rather, it is about letting go of anything that is not a part of your true nature. This includes letting go of disempowering and unresourceful beliefs, attachments to external conditions, negative emotions, and our need to control the physical circumstances around us. Therein lies the value of these spiritual teachings. The value of these teachings is not in giving you another technique which you hoard as part of your spiritual arsenal and use it to manipulate the world around you when needed. The true value of these teachings is in lighting a path and showing you the aspects of your being that are not in accordance with your divine nature. Once you understand this, then life becomes very simple. There is nothing more you have to do, be, or have. Doesn't this statement sound familiar? It is what the spiritual gurus have been saying all along since the beginning of time. There is nothing more you can add unto yourself that will make you more complete. You may certainly try all sorts of ways and means to become complete while believing in the illusion that you are not. Yet, whatever physical actions you take can never detract from your completeness, although they can certainly make you feel miserable and pinch you off from the universal flow. Let's take a look at a few ways people have used to find their true selves since the beginning of time. To reach that desired state of bliss and happiness, humankind has tried everything from adventure sports, reckless behavior, to drugs. All of these have worked, but only for a while. After that temporarily heightened state of excitement has worn off, the individual is left wanting, and off he goes in search of more thrilling adventures. The cycle repeats itself. What's the issue here? The answer is obvious. The individual in question is searching for something more than he can add to his life so that he can feel complete again, not realizing that he is already complete. His entire approach is misguided and is focused on having more, not realizing that what he seeks exists in the opposite direction. If this individual could just drop all his negative emotions, attachments, thoughts of wanting and lack, he would be in such a state of pure happiness and bliss that he does not have to go anywhere or do anything. Many readers of my books have experienced this state of pure happiness and bliss for themselves. The breakthrough happens when we learn how to stay in this state for longer and longer periods at a time until we are there all of the time. That is all there is to it. When you realize you don't have to be anything, do anything, or go anywhere for something to happen, you would have been successful in your inner transformation. This is when nothing ever bothers you again. I spent one whole decade of my life searching for that magical spiritual technique or method that would give me everything I wanted. I was desperate to learn how to attract more things into my life. I did all of this without realizing that I was actually moving further away from my goal and not any closer towards it. Each time I learned a new technique and insisted that it had to work, I did not gain a new understanding. Rather, I only strengthened my attachment to the outer conditions of my life. My attachment to these various external goals, be they people, events, and circumstances, kept me mired in a soup of contradictory feelings. My inner state was tumultuous and not at all at peace. The reason why so little happened for me back then was not because I was using the wrong techniques, but because my entire approach was misguided. I kept piling on more stuff onto my already chaotic inner state, not realizing that it was moving me further away from that manifestative state which I was looking for. Had I returned my own inner consciousness back to its original, pure state, everything I asked for would have materialized in my experience very quickly. Therefore, the crux of these teachings is to get you back to that pure and peaceful state. This is perhaps the greatest irony of all. To live an unlimited life and truly flourish, one has to first return to zero. It is only when one restores his inner consciousness to a state of pure nothingness and beingness that everything starts to happen. The zero state is the state which encompasses infinite possibilities. It is the state from which everything is possible, but you have to get there first. you need to make a conscious intention to get back to zero. There is a powerful exercise that will greatly aid you in this journey. As you go about your day, consciously ask yourself whether you are adding more stuff to your life experience or dropping something that is not needed. For example, each time you experience a negative emotion, ask yourself whether you are unconsciously adding something to your life that is not part of your basic nature or dropping something that is unneeded. You will realize as you go through this exercise that we spend most of our days picking up unwanted baggage. We not only pick up negative thoughts and beliefs, but also allow ourselves to hold on to negative emotions for extended periods of time. This is what Abraham Hicks refers to as picking up resistance along our physical trail. When you become conscious of the distinction between picking up and letting go in every moment, you can make a decision to let go of it all. In fact, the mere conscious awareness that you have unintentionally picked something up sets off the spontaneous process of releasing. So there is really nothing else you have to do for this process to work. Just cultivating the simple awareness that you are unintentionally holding on to something will automatically cause you to let it go. For example, I may notice that I feel unusually tense after a conversation with a friend. Upon asking myself the earlier question, I realize that I have been picking up the worries she shared with me and holding onto them as if they were mine. I may have done so out of a sense of concern for my friend, but holding on to anything is wasted energy that can never achieve anything. Notice that even feeling a sense of concern adds something to my state of pure beingness. This realization makes me let go of my negative emotions all at once. Those negative emotions were never part of my divine nature in the first place. Becoming aware of them was the first step to letting them go. Similarly, you may notice yourself feeling particularly unsettled after watching a piece of news or having a conversation with a friend. Even surfing the internet or watching the television nowadays can upset our inner states. Of course, the best thing to do is not to expose yourself to anything that you know will upset you. The next best thing is to let go of negative emotions by becoming aware that you are needlessly holding on to them. You'll be surprised at how much junk you pick up throughout the day. We feel angry about things and people we hardly know about. We feel the need to control external people, events, and circumstances that have nothing to do with us. All of this wanting to control moves us further away from that state of pure bliss because we have unknowingly added so much unwanted stuff to our lives. If we allowed all those negative feelings and emotions to pass right through us like water rolling off a duck's back, we would be free from them forever. Nothing would be able to upset our inner peace. I am sometimes asked why I do not see the need to rebut or defend myself in a social or professional setting. For example, in response to certain unkind words that have been said. If you have been following my logic, you'll instantly see that the act of defending oneself or one's viewpoint does nothing more than move ourselves further away from the very peace we seek. Defending ourselves, whether by actions or words, does not make us more complete. Instead, it upsets our inner balance even more. Someone may have uttered unkind words to hurt us, unintentionally or reactively as part of their own deeply embedded beliefs. If we get angry or defensive in response, then their words or actions have indeed damaged our inner peace. But if we remain centered on an inner state of love and peace, then nothing can affect us. The perpetrator ends up disturbing his own sense of inner peace and nothing more. This is why Abraham Hicks often teaches that you must value your own happiness more than your desire to be right. You must want to be happy more than you want to be right. Physical possessions are another tricky area of our lives. I am not against material possessions. and I enjoy many beautiful things in my life, all of which I have intended at some point in time. However, be mindful that each time you add a physical possession to your life experience, you are also adding a whole bunch of possible emotional attachments. Therefore, it is not only the physical object you are adding, but also the related emotions. It is certainly possible to enjoy a material object purely for what it is. I enjoy commuting in my car, typing on my laptop, and using all the latest technological gadgets. I appreciate the sense of ease and convenience that they bring into my life. However, if you find yourself becoming attached to your material possessions, such as worrying about whether they will be stolen, damaged, or whether you can afford the monthly payments, then you are needlessly adding more into your life. It is not your material possessions that affect your inner state, but rather your emotional attachments to them. The good news is that you can let your attachments go just like that. I've always been a gadget lover. In my early days, I was always worried about losing or damaging one of my gadgets. I was careful not to drop them and would watch over them like a hawk when I lent them to someone else. Eventually, I realized that those people whom I loaned my gadgets to enjoyed using them more than me. They used them without a sense of attachment and could enjoy their experience to the fullest. On the other hand, I was always worried about damaging or spoiling one of my own precious gadgets. It was my strong, unconscious attachment to them that resulted in my negative feelings on the inside. As I deepened my spiritual practice over the years, I was delighted to learn that I still enjoyed using the same gadgets. The only difference is that I am no longer attached to them. I see them as something separate from me. I am just as fine with or without them. I enjoy using them while they are in my possession, but I know I will be all right with selling or giving them away when the time comes. Adopting this new mindset has made me enjoy my hobby even more. While you may not share the same hobby as me, most of us have developed similar attachments in other parts of our lives. These attachments, and not the physical possessions or relationships themselves, are not our divine nature. In turn, holding on to them affects our inner states and keeps us from experiencing the fullness of a life without limits. When you become aware of these attachments and let them go, you are free. Chapter 6: A Return to Zero. We touched on an important premise in the previous chapter. To lead an absolutely amazing life and manifest without limits, one needs to first return to zero. This piece of the puzzle is so counterintuitive precisely because it flies in the face of everything we have been taught. We have been taught that a good life is one filled with lots of stuff, one in which all of our deepest desires comes true. And yet, to get to this flourishing state where your life is filled with magic and miracles, one first needs to drop everything and return to a zero state. That is when the magic can happen. Most people are reluctant to get themselves to a zero peaceful state because they see it as a regressive step backward. It goes against everything they have been working for their whole lives. They feel a need to fill their lives with more stuff. As I have explained several times, even our best efforts at dictating what goes into our lives will be limited because we cannot see the full picture that the universe has. We may plan our lives with the best of efforts and intentions, but any planning we do will still be limited by our human perspectives. This is not to say that you should not decide what goes into your life. You are free to choose the things you desire in life. But once you have made those choices, then leave the specifics to the universe. Let the universe fill in the details and orchestrate the steps in between. The universe always sees the full picture and knows the best way and timing to deliver something to you. If you are willing to give up control of this aspect of the manifestation process to the universe, then you will realize that everything always happens in divine timing and in the most harmonious ways possible. Nothing is ever delayed or withheld from you. Fortunately, returning to zero does not mean giving up everything you have in life right now. It does not mean renouncing and turning your back on this material world. Some people think that returning to zero means giving up all their material possessions and living reclusively in a cave. Some of them go to the extent of cutting themselves off from the outside world, not realizing that they can find their inner peace right where they were. Living a spiritual life does not mean walking away from your current life and giving up everything you have. You can certainly choose to do so if that aids in your return to a zero state, but it is unnecessary. You can return to a state of inner peace and calmness wherever you are. Your divine nature is peace. There have been several books in the popular press about giving up one's material possessions and leading a simple life. The message conveyed by these books is incomplete in that the emphasis is on physical actions, such as the act of giving up one's material possessions, instead of their true spiritual significance. It is possible to give up all material possessions and still remain very attached to the comforts of the physical world. Conversely, it is also possible to give up all of our attachments while still living our current lives. I have found the latter to be less disruptive and more transformational. The ability to stay centered in a peaceful and neutral state, no matter what happens on the outside, is a useful ability to cultivate. It ensures that you remain unfazed despite outer circumstances. This means that the actions or words of another, or the way things are in the outside world, have no power over you. You pay absolutely no attention to them, as nothing can affect your inner peace and move you away from that zero state. The zero state is one that is extremely conducive for manifestations. This is a state in which you totally give up any control or attachments to the outcome. It is a state where you neither yearn for the presence of something nor complain about its absence. It is a state where having something will be all right for you and not having it will also be equally all right. A zero state is characterized by a total lack of emotional polarity. This means you are neither feeling negative nor positive on the inside. However, as those of you who have practiced this will know, the lack of an emotional charge in the zero state results in spontaneous positive feelings of peace and joy. Therefore, when you shift into a neutral state and return to zero, you start to perceive the eternal well-being that has always been there. This palpable joy you feel is a sense of spontaneous and untethered happiness. It is different from the deliberately conjured happiness you experience when you are trying to feel good to attract something into your life. Notice the difference between the two. Any intentions that you set in the zero state has to materialize in your physical experience very quickly, often without any noticeable time lag at all. However, there are two necessary conditions for this to occur. First, you must set your intention while in that zero state. Second, you must remain in the zero state until whatever you ask for materializes on the outside. Most people are able to fulfill the first condition with some practice, but it is the second condition that trips most people up. They are unable to remain in the zero state for long enough until their intention comes true on the outside. Let us discuss the first condition, that of setting intentions while in the zero state. This may seem counterintuitive at first glance, since an intention signifies a desire or a wanting for something.
If so, how does one hold an intention while being in a completely neutral and peaceful state? This is an inner riddle which I have covered in several of my previous books, but this knowledge is so integral to the overall manifestation process that there is great value in going through it again. An intention signifies a desire for a particular outcome. When we have a desire for something, two things occur at the same time. First, we recognize the absence of that which we are asking for, which is why we ask for it in the first place. And second, we hope for the presence of what we ask for, which is why we become impatient or worried when it does not show up. Understand that it is not your intentions that are the issue, but rather your unconscious attachments to the outcome. Both aspects of your intention, that of recognizing an absence and hoping for a presence, disturb your inner state and move you away from that pure 0 point of peace. Picture the 0 point as centered squarely in the middle of a scale. Negative emotions of worry and fear move you away from the center into negative territory. For example, each time you worry whether or when the things you ask for will show up, you are moving into negative space. Each time you feel discouraged that nothing has happened yet on the outside, you move into negative space. Each time you feel resentful about what someone has since it reminds you of your own lack, you move into negative space. Staying in this negative space keeps your desired manifestations away from you. Instead, what you end up manifesting is everything that is compatible with this negative state, such as more reasons and circumstances to feel worried, discouraged, or resentful about. The reverse is true as well. Each time you hold a strong emotional attachment to your desires and insist that they have to happen in a certain way or by a certain time, you move off center. Therefore, there is only one question you have to ask to become an effective manifester. Am I centered on my peace right now? The answer to this question lets you know whether you are on the right track. If you ask this question and find that you are not centered on peace because of your feelings of worry or fear, then all you need to do is to let those extraneous feelings go. Those feelings have never been part of you in the first place. They are not in your divine nature. Let those feelings go from your inner consciousness and return to zero. That is all you need to do to flourish in your life. If you maintain your focus on cultivating your inner state and return it to a state of peace when something goes out of balance, then you will find all the good things happening in your life. When I first embarked upon these teachings, most of my time was spent on restoring my inner state back to zero. It was certainly difficult to do so in the beginning. Years of mental conditioning and neglect have resulted in a disempowering belief system, and I battled thoughts of fear and worry all day long. What if this does not work? What if the things I ask for do not happen in my life? In the past, I would have spent all of my waking consciousness engaged in these thoughts. I would have followed those worrisome thoughts to their logical conclusion and spent the whole day stewing in negative emotions. Unbeknownst to me, I was allowing myself to be knocked off center. What I did after learning these spiritual truths was to spend a lot of time focused on cultivating my inner state. Each time I was knocked off center, I focused on getting right back again. I focused on getting centered. I became relentless at doing so, regardless of how many times my inner peace was disrupted in a day. Over time, as I kept my focus on where it should be, I found my outer conditions improving. I started spending more and more time in that zero state. Eventually, I lived from that zero state. It became my new home. So do not be discouraged if you find yourself spending a lot of time getting back to zero in the beginning. It is a positive sign that changes are happening. Keep your mental focus on that zero state, and you will get or stay there eventually. Notice how it feels like to experience a desire or attachment to a particular outcome. This will be a negative feeling of lust, that of wanting something but not being able to have it. The thought of wanting something and yet not having it immediately or in the foreseeable future gives rise to negative feelings of unhappiness, resentment, or worry. For example, you may want something but not think that you can afford it. You may want something very badly but think it is out of reach for you. It is therefore not your pure preference for something that is the issue. It is that feeling of not being able to have it. The key to setting effective intentions is to take the lightest touch possible without unknowingly triggering either aspect as discussed above. This means you set your intention while always remaining centered on that zero state. What results is the purest and therefore most magnetic intention which you can possibly hold, which means it has to materialize in your physical experience extremely quickly. I have developed a protocol to walk you through and help you understand this process of setting light intentions. This process is based on the Sedona method, as developed by Lester Levinson. I have found the Sedona method to be immensely helpful in letting go of unwanted negative emotions without unnecessary rationalization or thought. That being said, you can use any other technique you're comfortable with to help you let go of the negative aspects of your intention. The purpose of this protocol is not to prescribe a particular technique, but to clearly show you what can be dropped from your inner state. When you drop anything that is non essential to your manifestations, you free the universe to work its magic. Chapter 7: A Protocol for Setting 0-Point Intentions. Intention setting is a crucial but often overlooked part of the creative process. One reason why many people downplay its importance is because the act of setting an intention makes it seem like nothing is happening. It all seems like a mental exercise done in one's mind and happening only in one's imagination. In a culture where most people feel the need to go out there and do something or make something happen, the act of setting an intention seems like the most pointless thing to do in the world. After all, there are so many things we can do right now rather than sit there and set an intention. This form of misguided thinking cannot be further from the truth. The act of setting an intention is what sets everything off. It is the trigger that sets into motion the whole chain of events and lets the universe know that you desire the eventual manifestation in your life. We set intentions all the time, whether we know it or not. As a result, most of our intentions are unconscious. As I have mentioned several times in my other books, individuals who are unaware of these universal laws tend to set their intentions unconsciously. They are unaware of what the universe is picking up on and only see the effects of their inner states when unwanted manifestations start showing up in their lives. Since they lack the understanding to link these outer manifestations to their inner states, they start ascribing false causes to many of the events in their lives. These false causes can range from luck, position of the stars, some agreement made in their past lives, to some external power controlling their lives. It is possible to be so caught up in these false causes that you literally create your own reality around them. This is yet another roundabout way which we go about creating our own reality. When you peel off the multiple layers of false beliefs and the veil created by these illusions,
You realize that the person directing, acting in, and watching the movie all along has been you. No one else can create or dictate your reality on your behalf unless you allow them to. This comes back to our earlier point that doing the inner work is about dropping anything that is not a part of your divine nature until you come face to face with who you really are. The truth is that there are no unwanted manifestations. If you traced everything back to its point of origin, you would realize that every single event or circumstance in your life started as an intention, which is nothing more than pure mental energy. The universe picked up and acted on this mental impulse by flowing more energy in its direction, which eventually led to a full blown physical manifestation. Of course, if you are a deliberate and conscious creator, then this will be very pleasing to you as you observe your desired reality shifting into being every single time. However, if you are an unconscious creator, then this observation can be quite scary indeed. The universe does not discern between the content of our intentions. It does not care whether we set them carelessly or carefully. Ironically, intentions that are set carelessly tend to manifest faster for most people, since these intentions are usually set with a very light touch and with almost no attachment to the outcome. On the other hand, intentions that are set carefully tend to be more about important matters, which means there is a whole lot more attachment to the final outcome. This also means that the intention is likely to be more loaded in nature and not as vibrationally pure. One benefit of doing this inner work is that you start to gain more clarity about the physical experiences in your life. As you pay more attention to your inner states and how you feel in each moment, you experience an expansion of your inner awareness. This means that you no longer suffer from post manifestation shock, that of realizing you have manifested something unwanted only after it shows up in your life. You will always have pre manifestation awareness, which means that you not only know when and what things are about to happen by accurately perceiving the energy field you are a part of, but are able to change the course of future outcomes. Let's now go through the process of setting 0 point intentions. By that, I mean setting an intention that is so vibrationally pure, it contains the vibrational essence of what you intend into your life and nothing else. It does not contain any feelings of worry, desperation, deservingness, guilt, resentment, lust, or impatience. A pure intention is one that purely encompasses the vibrational essence of what you are asking for and nothing more. To understand what a pure intention feels like, we have to contrast it with an intention that is energetically not as pure. Note that I am not referring to the morality or ethicality of our intentions here, as in the common definition of the phrase impure intentions. The concept here is how the intention makes you feel on the inside as you bring it to mind. Let's start by bringing up an intention which you have been holding on to for quite some time. Choose something which has not yet manifested in your life and you are beginning to wonder if it'll ever happen. You may also be feeling a little discouraged or desperate about the whole thing. Notice how you feel on the inside as you gently remind yourself of this intention. Note that in addition to your intention, there are also strong negative undercurrents in the form of feelings and emotions. These undercurrents may include feelings of fear that you will not get what you want, impatience over how long the process is taking, worry about when something will manifest for you, and so on. But this is the key. All of these strong emotional undercurrents prevent you from holding a pure intention. When you let these unwanted aspects go, what you ask for has to manifest in your physical reality very quickly. That is all there is to it. The whole art of manifestation summarized in 2 sentences.
This is, of course, easier said than done, since we need an effective way to completely let go of these emotional undercurrents. What I recommend that you do for this first exercise is to take a piece of paper and write down your intention at the top and underline it. For example, your intention may be for a new car. Below that intention, write down all the emotional undercurrents which you can detect in your inner consciousness. You don't have to try hard to find them. Just sit quietly, bring up the original intention, what you just wrote and underline across the top of the page, and notice all the emotional undercurrents that automatically come up. Write them down in point form on the page. The reason for doing this exercise is to clearly isolate and list the emotional undercurrents that may cloud your intention one by one. When you try and deal with them in your head, everything may seem like a coagulated, overwhelming mess. You gain mental clarity when you list them out. What you thought was a huge, heavy mess and mass of emotions actually consists of a few simple themes repeated over and over again. For each emotional undercurrent you detect, write down what you feel and also the reasons you feel that way. For example, you may feel fearful. What is that you are fearful about? There is no need to go into an elaboration of the issue. We are not trying to explain things away. Instead, use short words and phrases to represent how you feel. There is also no need to dig deep and come up with proper sounding, fully rationalized reasons. Whatever comes up for you spontaneously is what most needs to be cleared up, and they may not be rational feelings in the first place. For example, you may feel fearful that you will not get what you want. Write that down. You may feel impatient as it has already been 5 years since you asked for that thing. Write that down as well. There is no need to censor what you write, as this is for your own reference only. Keep writing until you can no longer detect anything new on the inside. You may find it necessary to close your eyes, tune into your inner state, detect what is there, and then open your eyes to write your own inner observations down. Repeat this process as many times as necessary. If it is your first time delving into your inner state and trying this exercise, you may notice subtle nuances in your feelings. For example, the feeling of worry may not be as straightforward as it seems. You may feel worried for multiple reasons, such as over 1, whether your desire will come true, 2, when it will come true, and 3, if it will come true in exactly the way you intended. You may also be worried about whether you are asking for what you want in the correct manner. Each reasons represents a slightly different emotional aspect and should be a new item on your list. When you have identified all the emotional undercurrents related to your original intention, take a look at your list. Do you have a cluttered list? Here's the exciting part that will motivate you to do the inner work. If you only had your intention written down on that piece of paper and nothing else, then that intention has to come true for you very quickly. This is an immutable, universal law. However, if the piece of paper is cluttered with lots of counterintentions in the form of various negative emotions, then the physical manifestation will take a longer time because your intention is not as vibrationally pure. Setting a pure intention takes very little time. Once you have mastered this process, it becomes possible to set an intention in a split second and have it manifest very quickly in your physical experience. The reason why people may experience delays in their physical manifestations is because what they think is a simple and pure intention really isn't that simple or pure at all. It is complicated and loaded with all these emotional undercurrents as you have just identified. The more emotional undercurrents you have to deal with, the longer and more arduous the manifestation process will seem. Now that you have identified all the emotional undercurrents related to your intention, go through the list and rate each one of them in terms of their emotional intensity. Once again, there's no need to analyze any of this. Simply read one item at a time and feel the feelings that come up for you without dwelling in them. How strong is each feeling on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 mean that the feeling is not there at all, which will not be the case since you have written it down. 10 represents an extremely intense feeling that grips you completely. A feeling that is 10 out of 10 is so intense that you are completely paralyzed and overwhelmed by this feeling each time you experience it. In my experience, most of your ratings will fall within the range of 1 to 8 or 9. Simply identifying and acknowledging these negative feelings will not result in unwanted manifestations. Many people are under the misguided notions that feeling these negative emotions or acknowledging them in any way will result in unwanted manifestations. This cannot be further from the truth. It is only when you immerse yourself in these negative feelings for prolonged periods of time that you set things in motion. Also, by acknowledging these feelings and letting them go through these exercises, you release them from your consciousness once and for all. Suppressing these negative feelings each time they come up takes way more energy than letting them go. With practice, and in time to come, you will have the ability to think about something and set a pure intention in less than a second. Each intention that you set will be so focused that none of these emotional undercurrents or counter intentions ever enter the vibrational mix. Also, anytime you detect a negative emotion, you'll be able to let it go within a couple of seconds. This means that with focused practice, the whole manifestation process, from setting an intention to letting go of negative feelings, can be done in no more than a few seconds. This is what it truly means to live the manifestation experience, and life becomes one exhilarating manifestation after another. In the next chapter, I will walk you through the process of dropping each negative and unwanted aspect of your emotion until what remains is the purest essence of the intention alone.
Chapter 8: The Centering Scale. In the previous chapter, you wrote down your original intention along with the emotional undercurrents you detected while holding that intention in your inner consciousness. All of the negative emotions which you identified hinder the manifestation of your original intention. The sooner you let each of those unwanted aspects of your intentions go, the faster the primary intention will manifest in your experience. Most people do not realize how much energy it takes to cling onto their negative emotions. By repeatedly holding onto them and suppressing them in your consciousness, you spend an inordinate amount of time and energy flipping between the two extremes. Most people go from feeling really hopeful about their desires, which means suppressing all these negative emotions that exist under the surface, to feeling really discouraged that their manifestations have not showed up yet, which means stewing in these negative feelings. As such, what they characterize as a delay in their physical manifestations isn't really a delay at all. They may think they are focused on their intentions for most of the time. In fact, they are focused on the negative emotions or counter intentions resulting from the primary intention. Swinging from one extreme to another results in a chaotic and tumultuous inner state, which in turn leads to scattered mental energy and little or no results. An effective manifester is someone who takes a light touch and focuses his or her mental energies very purely on the primary intention alone. To help you achieve this, I developed a centering scale which you can use. The centering scale is an inner calibration technique. One thing I noticed in my early days of doing this work is that I lacked an effective benchmark to measure and track my progress. For example, I knew the importance of maintaining a peaceful inner state, but how would I know whether I was truly at peace? I knew the importance of dropping all my negative emotions, but was I still unconsciously clinging on to any residual or subtle feelings? The centering scale helps you along in your inner journey by answering these questions. Before we take a look at the centering scale, let us consider how you rated each emotion on your sheet of paper. Rank order the emotions according to their emotional intensity. For example, the emotion which you rated as the most intense will be number one on your list, followed by the next most intense, and so forth and so on. If two or more emotions are rated as equally intense, make a simple comparison between them to see which one is more intense than the other. The purpose of rank ordering these negative emotions, also known as the unwanted aspects of your intention, is so that we can focus our energies on the biggest issues first. The unwanted aspect, which is ranked first on your list, is the one that takes up most of your mental energy and occupies most of your consciousness. Therefore, the greatest benefits can be reaped from dealing with it first. When you free yourself from the biggest emotional issue, you free up your mental capacity to work on the remaining issues. The process, therefore, becomes easier as you go along. The concept of a centering scale works like this. In the middle of the scale is the 0 point, the point where your purest intentions resides. This is the intention which you have written down and underlined at the top of your sheet. As I explained earlier, an individual who gets to the point of being able to hold this intention purely and experience nothing else in his inner state will live a flowering life experience. He will be able to manifest without any limitations and with very little time lag. This means that if you are able to write your intention down on that piece of paper and not detect even the slightest tinge of emotional undercurrent, that intention has to come true very quickly. Stated differently, your manifestations are delayed because of all the other stuff that is on that sheet of paper. To the left of that 0 point lies negative space. Anytime you are in negative space, you are not at the 0 point and therefore not at peace. Similarly, to the right of that 0 point lies positive space. Once again, you are not at the 0 point if you are in positive space. I have not really talked about this positive space as so far as the concept may be somewhat abstract and difficult to grasp. Also, I have discovered that most of our manifestation blocks tend to occur in negative space, and taking care of what happens in the negative space will clear up many issues for most people. The positive space represents a sense of desire, attachment, eagerness, or lust for the outcome. Some people may be confused by this concept of a positive space, since we may believe that it is good to be ambitious and want certain things in life. The truth is that a sense of wanting also moves us away from the 0 point and therefore keeps us apart from our physical manifestations. This may be the reason why manifestations do not occur for some people even after letting go of all their negative emotions. These feelings of desire and wanting are more subtle and harder to pinpoint than the straightforward negative emotions. We may be attached to the outcome without realizing it. This attachment is so subtle that it often goes undetected unless you do some serious inner work. One quick way to uncover any sense of attachment is to ask yourself these related questions. How will I feel if this intention never ever comes true in my life? How will I feel if I can never have this in my life? How will I feel if no matter what I do, I will never have what I'm asking for? Most people experience a gripping sense of tightness and fear once they ask this question. I am often surprised to experience this feeling even after I thought I have done a pretty thorough job of letting go of the unwanted aspects. Take it as a good sign that more inner work needs to be done and more stuff needs to be let go of. Each person will experience his or her attachment in slightly different ways. I experience mine as a lump in my throat and a tightness in my chest. This is the unconscious attachment which we have developed over time, such that we experience a sickening feeling in our bodies when we realize we will never be able to have something. This is the sense of attachment or clinging on to which I'm talking about here, and it represents another unwanted aspect of your intention. Write this attachment down on a piece of paper if you did not notice it earlier. This attachment can be pervasive and may show up in different forms. For example, a covert attachment to the outcome may result in irrationality and wishful thinking. We see this in many New Age practitioners when they start buying into miracle cures and rituals that are not grounded in these universal truths. They start believing in certain ritualistic practices or explore various convoluted means to get what they want. Some may even pay a medium or conduit to make things happen for them. All of this behavior stems from an overriding need to control and influence the outcome, which ironically moves an individual further away from the zero state. This attachment may also show up as wishful thinking and a need to prove that these metaphysical laws work to others. Once again, this is a very subtle behavioral tendency. Do you find the need to prove that these manifestation techniques work to others? Do you find yourself asking for things just to convince yourself or someone else that you can attract them? This relates to our earlier chapter on insisting that things only happen to us through supposedly spiritual means. The order which I advocate you drop these unwanted aspects is as follows. First, drop all of the negative aspects. These are the unwanted negative feelings that are often easier to identify and take up more of your mental energy. After you have dropped the negative feelings, you free up the much needed mental focus to work on the positive attachments, those feelings of wanting, lust, and desire. Improvements in your outer reality will start happening the moment you let go of even a small portion of these unwanted aspects. So, the best advice is to start right now from where you are. Now, before we cover the actual workings of the centering scale, I would like to point out a key feature of this scale. Each point in either negative or positive space has a counterpart. For example, a sense of strong attachment and insistence on the outcome, which occupies a point in positive space, has a corresponding point in negative space. This corresponding point is represented by a sense of lack or the feeling that you do not have something yet. The need to control the outcome may also stem from a suppressed worry that things may not turn out the way you want, and hence the need to exert control. Therefore, for every aspect which you have identified, try and see if its counterpart exists within you. This is a handy way to uncover more unwanted aspects of the intention which you have not detected. Every positive or negative point on the centering scale is off balance and therefore has a polarity. For every positive point, there is a balancing negative point and vice versa. However, note that the 0 point at the center of the scale has no balancing counterpart. It is whole, complete, and perfect by itself. It does not need another or something else to make it complete. This is your true divine nature. You do not need anything more to make you whole and complete. You already are. Everything is perfect the way it is. When you restore your inner state to this 0 point, you are free from all that inner turbulence. Start with the most intense emotion on your list and ask yourself how far off center it makes you feel. It may be helpful to visualize a straight line with the 0 point right in the middle, with markings to both the right and left side of that 0 point. The more intense the unwanted emotion, the further away from the center you are. Suppose that your most intense emotion, rated 9 out of 10 in terms of intensity, throws your inner state way off balance when you bring it up. Allow yourself to feel this emotion fully without suppressing it. Make a mental note of where you are on the centering scale. You should be somewhere far off to the left, in negative space and away from the 0 point. Once you have identified where you are on the scale, allow yourself to let this feeling go. I do so by asking myself the 3 questions used in the Sedona method. 1. Just for now, could I let this feeling go? 2. Would I let this feeling go? 3. When can I let this feeling go? After you ask each question, pause and take a breath. Breathe out slowly as you answer each of the questions mentally in your mind. We are not looking for a specific answer here. Most of the time, you will realize that the answer is yes. You can indeed let a negative feeling go because it is nothing more than a mere feeling. The feeling is not a part of you. It is something you have inadvertently held onto and allowed yourself to experience over and over again. Whether you answer yes or no to each of the 3 questions does not matter. You'll be releasing a bit of the suppressed negative energy as you go through the process. I take as much time as possible with the process, never rushing through the 3 questions. Take as much time as you need to go through the questions. When you are done, notice where you are right now on the centering scale with regards to this particular emotion. Are you at 0? Have you moved closer to 0? If you have not, repeat the letting go process again. It may take several cycles to completely let go of an unwanted aspect and restore your inner state to one of peace. I have found that some negative emotions may require hundreds of cycles to completely let go of, but do not let that deter you. Once you are free from a negative emotion, you will be free from it forever. There are other techniques you can use to let go of unwanted emotions, such as the emotional freedom technique, known as EFT or tapping, or Byron Katie's The Work. Use any complementary technique that works for you. In the beginning, it will take some time to work through all the unwanted emotional undercurrents that you have written down on paper. Do not be surprised if you take a few days to work through this list. It is perfectly all right to work through one or several items in a single sitting and then resume later on. The good news is that you will reap permanent benefits from doing this work. You will be clearing up major blocks that stand in the way of your physical manifestations. Strike each item off the list when you are completely free from the unwanted feeling. This means that you are able to hold the primary intention purely in your mind without detecting even the slightest hint of this feeling. When you have successfully done so, you would have returned your inner state to its 0 point that is the most conducive for outer manifestations. You may feel a tendency to rush through the process just to strike an unwanted feeling off the list. Doing so will not serve you, as one cannot pull wool over the universe's eyes. The universe always knows in each moment your precise feelings on every single subject. It is picking up on your vibrations perfectly. Therefore, while you may convince yourself or others that you have gotten over an issue, the litmus test is whether you are able to hold your intention purely without also spontaneously bringing up that unwanted feeling. Chapter 9: Using the centering scale for rapid vibrational fine tuning. The value of the centering scale becomes apparent when you use it as a tool for vibrational fine tuning. In the previous chapter, we walked through the step by step method of clearing all unwanted emotional aspects related to an intention. The long form method is helpful when you are learning how to use the process. However, as you become more proficient with the use of the centering scale, you should be able to rapidly center any intentions on the 0 point within a matter of seconds. Let's learn how to do so in this chapter. The centering scale offers a quick and easy way to find out if you are vibrationally off balance at any moment. To do so, gently bring your original intention to mind and observe how you feel on the inside. You may find it easier to close your eyes and mentally place your awareness on the center of your body, near where your heart is. This act is known as dropping into heart space. Dropping into heart space disengages your consciousness from your ongoing stream of rational thoughts and quiets the mind chatter. The mere act of dropping into heart space alone should make you feel more peaceful and centered. I provide more details on how to drop into your heart space and talk about the implications in Come and Sit With Me, Book 1. Once you are in heart space, do a quick mental calibration by noticing where you are on the centering scale. Recall that at the center of the scale sits the 0 point. This is a very quick calibration which takes just a second. Ask yourself quietly, where am I currently on the centering scale? Notice the answer that comes up for you. This is not a question that requires any additional thought. If you are feeling peaceful and calm on the inside, then you are at 0. If you detect ripples of any disturbances in your state characterized by the presence of feelings or thoughts, then you are off center. If you are not at 0, notice whether you are in positive or negative space. Once again, a thorough analysis of your inner state is not required. What we are going for here is an intuitive snap judgment that gives you a sense of where you are. The purpose of the centering scale is to provide you with a method to quickly and accurately map your inner state to a reference scale. You can also use numbers to help you in the process. For example, you may drop into heart space and quickly check where you are on the centering scale. You notice that you are currently a -3 on the scale. This means that you are currently feeling negative emotions on the inside. These numbers are arbitrary, but they help you translate the magnitude or intensity of your feelings into tangible terms. For example, a slight sense of irritation could be -1 on the centering scale, as compared to intense anger, which may be -5. The numbers themselves are not important. Their purpose is to show the relative intensity of your feelings and how far away you are from the 0 point. The larger the number, the further away you are from the peaceful, centered state. Let's suppose that you bring up an intention and realize that you are -3 on the centering scale. You immediately look around in your inner state and see what is causing this divergence from the 0 point. Upon some observation, you may realize that this -3 on the scale is caused by feelings of worry that you will not get what you want. This is when you take a deep breath and ask yourself the 3 letting go questions from the previous chapter. Could I let this go? Would I let this go? When can I let this feeling go? You can also use any equivalent spiritual technique. For example, one round of EFT tapping. At the end of one round of letting go, sit quietly and notice where you are on the centering scale. Are you still at -3? Or are you closer to peace now at -1? You keep repeating the process until your point on the centering scale shifts. I have discovered from my own personal experience that the further away from the 0 point I am, the easier it is to let go of these unwanted feelings. This may seem somewhat counterintuitive for you, which is why I urge you to try this process for yourself. I often find that a -5 on the centering scale becomes a -2 in just one round of letting go. On the other hand, getting from -1 to 0 may not be as easy. Repeat the letting go cycle as many times as needed until you are as close to 0 as possible. Sometimes you may think that you are at 0, but still feel a tinge of irritation, unhappiness, sadness, or worry on the inside. This means that you are not yet at 0. When the emotional undercurrents which you feel on the inside are very slight, it may be difficult to quantify and assign a number to them. For example, they may be less than -1 in terms of intensity. When this happens, congratulations, you have made much progress and are almost at 0. However, still a little more work that needs to be done. The centering scale is very useful for dealing with subtle emotions that may color our daily lives without us even realizing it. Most people walk around with a slight tinge of worry, unhappiness, or uneasiness. We have conditioned ourselves to believe that it is normal to walk around with these feelings, which is why we carry them all day. You will be surprised at how much mental energy is required to suppress these feelings and hold on to them. For example, most people are not breathing as deeply as they can. Their breathing is shallow because they have unknowingly held on to some tightness and tension in their bodies. The true value of the centering scale becomes apparent when you get very close to 0. This is where the breakthrough happens because the centering scale is a sensitive measuring tool for us to drop that last bit of tightness or tension. For example, you can close your eyes and feel if you are at 0. If you are not and detect a slight negative undertone in your inner state, feel whether you are to the left of 0, which is slightly negative, or whether you are to the right of 0, which is slightly positive on the scale. Imagine a highly sensitive piece of industrial measuring equipment that can pick up on very slight disturbances to your inner state. Become very still and just notice how you feel on the inside without trying to influence your feelings. If you want, you can imagine a needle either centered on 0 or moving slightly negative or positive, like those found on measuring instruments. Once you detect the slightest tension or tightness, ask yourself, can I let this last bit of tightness or tension or whatever description is appropriate for this feeling to go? Can I let this last bit of irritation go? Can I let this last bit of unhappiness go? When can I let this last bit of unhappiness go? As you ask this question, you will spontaneously realize that it is just a mere feeling that you have been holding on to, and you can let go of this feeling at any time. You can let go of it right now. Slowly take a deep breath and exhale slowly as you make this realization. At this point, I often feel a lot of tension leave my body. I may think my body is already very relaxed, but as I let go of the remaining tightness, my shoulders relax and droop down even further. This is a physical sign that we have let go of any remaining tightness and tension. Repeat the process until you are completely centered on the 0 point. It is sometimes possible to over-release and become too excited or hopeful about the outcome. When this happens, you may find your heart rate quickening and feel a sense of palpable excitement. Simply use the process in the same way, by identifying where you are in positive space. You may notice a slight sense of hopefulness, which is a +2 on the positive scale. Follow the same process described above to get yourself back to 0 point again. Some readers may wonder why there is a need to let go of positive emotions and feelings. The logic is the same. All types of feelings, whether positive or negative, are not part of our true divine nature. They are feelings we have inadvertently chosen to hold on to for various reasons. We hold on to positive feelings because they feel good. When we hold on to a feeling and believe that it is a part of us, we become attached to something that is not even real in the first place. Positive feelings about an outcome can also signal an attachment to what we intend to manifest. The only place where you can experience your divine nature is from the 0 state. It is the only state where the universe is completely free to work its magic without your interference or intervention. You may find it difficult to stay in the 0 state in the beginning. This is because once you get to 0, you may notice intrusive thoughts that shift you back into negative or positive space. The key is to quickly let go of these feelings once you detect them in your inner state, such that you restore your inner consciousness to one of total calmness and peace. Keep doing this until you are centered on feelings of calmness and peace. Being in the 0 state can bring up spontaneous feelings of love, joy, and peace. These are positive feelings that arise naturally by themselves and are not conditional on any outcome. You can go deeper into peace by releasing some of these feelings as well, which is something I have not discussed in my previous books up to this point. In all of my previous works, I would have advocated my readers to immerse themselves in these joyful and loving feelings. However, if you would like to deepen this work, then release on these positive feelings as well. Keep letting them go, and you will find yourself going even deeper into the peace and stillness. The 0 point is not just a conceptual or imaginary state. I have explained that it is a state which is extremely conducive for manifestations precisely because you are doing nothing. You are letting divine intelligence flow through you and getting things done through you. For once, you are not interfering with the flow of universal energy or working hard against it. Instead, you are at one and completely aligned with this powerful creative energy. You are at one with the universe, life force, and the Tao. Anytime you center yourself on the 0 point on the centering scale, you step into your full potential and harness the same power that creates worlds. The most miraculous realization happens when you remain centered on the 0 point. I do not wish to spoil the fun for you here, so I invite you to try it out for yourself and experience what happens. But here's a hint. As you let go of the successive layers of feelings that come up while remaining centered on the 0 point, you step into the full realization of who you really are. The best way I can describe this experience is as such. You will eventually come face to face with the I am presence that is deep within you. And you will notice the I, also known as infinite stillness, that is at the core of your being. Coming face to face with I am presence is a life-changing experience as it marks the beginning of your flowering life. Chapter 10: The Second Dimension of the Centering Scale. It is possible to live your life in a constant state of grace and wonderment. The key to doing so is to remain grounded while you actively practice these spiritual principles. Living a spiritual life does not mean downplaying or neglecting the physical aspects of your life. Instead, it is about recognizing that the physical and spiritual worlds are are two sides of the same coin, inseparable from one another. You are equipped with the tools to navigate both worlds at once, so use them. Trying to deny the existence of either realm can be counterproductive. A common misconception of spiritual seekers is the perceived need to eschew anything related to the physical world. Some do so by rejecting material possessions, believing that these are somehow impure or not spiritual. Others spend all their time on spiritual rituals or techniques trying to make things happen. As I have discovered for myself, either approach causes an imbalance in our inner states and causes us to deviate further away from that neutral zero point. The most straightforward path to living an absolutely thriving experience is to acknowledge that we are all spiritual beings having a physical experience and to live from that perspective. The physical world is, therefore, a wonderful blessing and not a bane. It allows us to enjoy the fruits of our manifestations with our physical senses. Many spiritual seekers fall into the trap of daydreaming or wishful thinking. In my experience, this occurs when someone spends so much time thinking about or even visualizing their probable futures that they lose their sacred connection with the present moment. They start visualizing from some point in the future instead of doing so from the present moment. As Seth so eloquently points out, your point of power is in the present. Therefore, everything happens from the present. When you place your focus on a desired reality in the present moment, you direct the current flow of powerful creative energy towards the manifestation of those circumstances. This allows what you seek to easily enter your physical life experience. There is a difference between being present and being realistic or pragmatic. Being present means becoming fully conscious of the now moment and immersing yourself completely in the moment. When you become fully present, you experience all your peace and calmness right now instead of deferring it to some point in the future. You savor all the unlimited good that is present right now, regardless of the current physical circumstances. On the other hand, being realistic often means focusing squarely on the problems and issues in your life right now. Instead of savoring all the calmness and peace that is available to you right now, you squander your precious mental energy worrying about the issues in your life, thus perpetuating more of it in your current and future experience. A sense of groundedness is a key element in many spiritual practices. I have written about the importance of grounding oneself in my previous books, but have not expounded on this topic fully. As we learn how to realize these spiritual teachings for a flourishing life experience, it is worthwhile to go into greater detail about immersing oneself in the present moment. To do so, we have to add a second dimension to the centering scale. The centering scale runs horizontally from left to right, with the 0 point at the center of the scale. Now imagine a vertical line running from top to bottom and intersecting this 0 point. We now have a two-dimensional scale in the form of a cross that runs in two directions, from left to right and top to bottom. The scale or line that runs horizontally from left to right has been covered extensively in this book. Our position on this scale represents the negative or positive feelings in our inner state. The scale or line that runs from top to bottom represents how grounded we are in the present moment. Anything that is above the 0 point on the vertical line means that we are currently perceiving and therefore setting our intentions from some point in the future. Since our point of power is always in the present, these intentions have very little power. Anything below the 0 point means that we are still trapped in the past and therefore not experience the fullness of the current moment. We pinch ourselves off from the fullness of life anytime we dwell excessively on the future or on the past. Some people spend all their time on wishful or ungrounded thinking. While you can certainly ask for anything you want in life, individuals who are ungrounded do not really believe they can get what they want. They spend most of their time immersed in a fantasy world in which they know will never happen in their lives. This is very different from placing your focus on a desired reality and expecting things to happen. The former is a form of denial or escape, while the latter is an astute use of your creative abilities. Others spend most of their time thinking about past mistakes and regrets. For example, you may feel guilty or ashamed about something that has happened in the past. The good news is that the past, whether it happened yesterday or 10 years ago, is over, and that there is no way you can ever relive the past again except through the power of your own thoughts. You can literally remain trapped in the past by rehashing those thoughts and feelings over and over again. But those unpleasant sensations you get from thinking about the past are just mere sensations, and they can be just as easily let go of using the letting go process we have covered in this book. An effective manifester not only has a peaceful and calm inner state, but he is also completely present and immersed in every moment. This is the second element for effective manifestations. Groundedness is an important aspect of spiritual practice because it prevents the practitioner from losing his or her point of reference in the physical world. Someone who is too immersed in these spiritual practices while not being sufficiently grounded may feel spaced out or dazed, which further affects their ability to set clear intentions in the present moment. One easy way to stay grounded while doing all of this spiritual work is to take a few moments to breathe deeply and to just feel the fullness of your being. Come into your physical body fully. Experience all the input from your senses and bring yourself fully into the current moment before setting your intentions on the inside. You can also sit with your feet flat on the floor and imagine sending your energy deep into the ground while receiving the earthly energy from the ground. This simple exercise, which I learned from Shakti Gawain in her book Creative Visualizations, has been very helpful in keeping me grounded as I shift my focus to the spiritual realm. Another way to stay grounded and centered on the 0 point is to use the centering scale. It is a good idea to ground and bring yourself fully into the present moment before dealing with the feelings and emotions that are in your inner state. Therefore, center yourself on the vertical scale first before centering yourself on the horizontal scale. You will also find that it is much easier to center yourself on the vertical scale than on the horizontal scale. All you have to do is to ask yourself this centering question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 being not present at all and 10 being fully present, how present am I in the current moment? With your eyes closed, feel for an answer on the inside. This is not a question that requires a logical or analytical answer. Instead, it is an intuitive question that is answered with your inner senses. You will find that a number always comes up intuitively. If the answer is not a 10, ask yourself this follow-up question. How do I make myself fully present such that I am a 10 on the scale? Once again, allow the answer to surface naturally. Often, just merely asking this question allows you to move to a 10 on the scale and allows you to become fully present. Another good question to ask: what would I experience if I am a 10 out of 10 right now on the scale? Thus, the entire flowering process we have discussed in this book can be summarized into 3 quick and easy steps. Step 1 is to center yourself vertically on the centering scale, such that you become fully present and grounded in the current moment, neither in the past nor in the future. You step into the fullness of your being as a powerful creator and tap into the creative energies that are available to you in the now moment. This should take no more than a few seconds. Step two is to center yourself horizontally on the centering scale. You do so by tuning into your inner state and detecting any subtle sensations or emotional undercurrents that exist, no matter how slight they may be. Use the centering scale to help you make very fine adjustments to your vibrational state, just as one would use a sensitive measuring instrument. For each sensation you detect that keeps you away from the 0 point, let it go by asking the three questions. The three questions can also be summarized and shortened into the following: could, would, and when. Just silently repeating the word could reminds you that it is just a feeling and not a part of you. You can always let a feeling go. Would reminds you that all it takes is just a willingness on your part to let go of this feeling. When reminds you that you can let go of this feeling anytime. You are already free from anything that is not a part of you. You just have to stop holding on to it. As you practice and become more effective at step two of the process, you will be able to let go of sensations and feelings in no more than a few seconds per feeling. Step three is to remain centered on the 0 point and to experience the fullness of the 0 point. There is no need to verbally state your intentions again, for what remains after letting go of all the unwanted aspects of your original intention will be the pure intention itself. This highly vibrationally active intention already exists and needs no repetition. There's nothing else you have to do. The fourth step. The fourth step is what happens when you finally return to a more outer directed way of living. Your everyday life is where the magic happens. So look out for all the good things you have asked for while consistently remaining centered on that 0 point for most of your day. When you wake up tomorrow morning and just before you open your eyes, relax and enjoy the good feelings from lazing around in bed. Bring these teachings to mind. Notice how free and light you feel from realizing that everything is already taken care of by the universe. Then mentally affirm, all doors open widely for me today. You can use any other affirmation which represents the same thing for you. This affirmation I've suggested is based on one by metaphysical author Florence Scovel Shinn. It signifies opportunities and doors opening for me wherever I go without any active intervention on my part. I set this intention every morning while I'm still in bed before I even open my eyes. I find that setting an overarching intention without specifying the details allows me to gently ease into my day even before it begins. I then jump right out of bed and eagerly go about my daily activities. Because I had pre-paved my day even before it started, I find that doors do indeed swing open for me, both literally and metaphorically, wherever I go throughout the day. Everything gets done with a sense of ease that leaves an outsider surprised. But you're not an outsider to all these teachings. You are in on these teachings along with me and the universe. There's a beautiful saying that one with the universe is a majority. You now have the keys to lead a magnificent, flowering life in which you can manifest and enjoy whatever you want with no limits. It's time for you to go out there and live the complete manifestation experience.